Hello everyone, welcome to today's lecture. And today we will be dealing with the ongoing crisis between Russia and Ukraine, which has captured the global headlines. I will try to make this topic very comprehensive so that you don't need to go somewhere else to read this. You'll get everything here as only, right? As we analyze this topic, we need to understand that there are series of events which were involved in this crisis, and we will be step by step dealing with all those issues, all those events which led to this war or which led to this crisis. I'll be dealing everything with in a very layman's language so that you can understand things very comprehensively and very easily. So, without wasting any time, let's just directly get into it. All right. So, like I said, like I always divide my class into some topics or some subparts, I'll be doing the same with today's lecture as well. We'll first be understanding the context as to why are we reading this and why is this important for our examination perspective. Second, we will understand the entire issue along with the historical background or the history of it, the historical background of Russia and Ukraine issue. Next, we will understand India's concern or India's stand on it, right? And at last, we will see the way forward. Way forward, or what could be the solutions to this war, or what is the way forward? Not exactly the solutions, but definitely the way forward, right? First thing first, let's understand the context first. Let's understand. So the context is very simple, as I've told you, that this is an ongoing crisis which we are noticing from quite a while now, right? And it is definitely capturing all the headlines these days. So that's precisely the context here. Okay, we know that we all are familiar with this map, I guess. I'll first make you understand, I'll first show you the places in the map so that you can relate. Whatever I'm going to teach you, you can relate with each and every, each and every line or each and every nation as to which country is located where, so that you can understand things better and also you can retain it. अगर आप map से चीज़ें पढ़ते हो तो it increases your retention capacity. So make sure whenever you're reading these kind of topics, you have your atlas besides you, right? This is the map of Ukraine. ठीक है, this map particularly is showing कि रशिया ने अपने troops कहाँ कहाँ पर भेजे हैं for the attack. So this is the Kiev, this is the capital of Ukraine. Here at the border of Ukraine lies Russia, right? This is Crimea, which Russia got. Russia annexed this place, Crimea, in 2014. These are the places, these are the separatist places जहाँ पर जो independent states मान लिए गए हैं अभी रशिया के द्वारा, and those states are Donetsk and Luhansk. We will see in the map in the further slides where are those two areas. This is Black Sea, a very, very important area, both in terms of the military wise, both strategically and military wise. Okay? This is a very important area. This sea is Sea of Azov, right? Sea of Azov. Okay, these are the European countries here. Yahan par this is Belarus. So this is a brief or the overview of the mapping portion. I hope now things are clear to you. कि यहाँ पर Kyiv है, the capital of Ukraine. This is Crimea situated here. This is Russia. This is the map of Ukraine. यहाँ पर on the eastern side of it lies the two states which are Donetsk and Luhansk, जिनको हम Donbas region भी कहते हैं. And we will, in further slides, we will understand why these two regions are really, really important for the ongoing crisis, right? So, as I've told you, that to understand, to analyze these topics, we must note that there is a series of events which took place, which took place leading to this crisis. Keeping in mind those same events, let's list out the events, and let's understand what were those events which led to this fight, which led to this war, not just fight, which led to this war. Okay, the first one was in 2013. What happened? The tension escalated between Ukraine and Russia over what? Over a trade deal or a political deal, a political or a trade deal which was supposed to happen between Europe and Russia. But the then Prime Minister Viktor Yanukovych, he was opposing it. He was not in favor of this deal because he was pro-Russian and he did not want to have this commitment or have this deal with the Europeans, right? So he did not really sign this deal. In that, to counter that, in the protest of this कि आपने deal sign नहीं करी, a group of people protested against the president, right? So this 2013 tension was basically, it was a protest we are talking about, the protest which were against the pro-Russian president Viktor Yanukovych. Regarding what? Because he did not sign this trade pact or the trade deal with the European countries, right? So people protested against him. This was the first thing to be noted here. The second thing which happened, which led to this war, was the Crimean crisis, which happened in 2014. Russia annexed Crimea. Crimea is the place which lies here. Okay? We have read this in the, we've seen this in the map. A very, very important place. Okay? Because this connects Russia and Ukraine with the Black Sea. Again, that is why it is very important. यहाँ पर काफी सारे ports वगैरह भी है, तो ये बहुत strategically this is a very important area, and that is why Russia annexed it in 2014, जिसकी वजह से Russia को G8 grouping, G8 members का जो group है उससे भी निकाल दिया गया था. Now that group is called as G7 because they removed Russia out of it because Russia annexed Crimea. So this was the second thing or the second event involved which led to this war. The third event was definitely, as I've told you, as I've spoken about the two regions, which is Donetsk and Luhansk region, which is situated. Let me just show you these two regions in the map for your better clarity. Again, this is the map of Ukraine, the capital, and these are the two independent states. ठीक है, लुहांस्क एंड डोनेस्क, जिनको हम कंबाइनली दोनबास रीजन भी बोलते हैं, राइट? दे गॉट इंडिपेंडेंस फ्रॉम यूक्रेन एंड रिसेंटली रशिया ने भी इनकी इंडिपेंडेंस को रिकॉग्नाइज कर लिया है, ऑफ कोर्स, सो दैट इट कैन हेल्प इन द वॉर. सो रशिया हैज आल्सो रिकॉग्नाइज देयर इंडिपेंडेंस रिसेंटली सो दैट दिस वॉर कुड बी इन देयर फेवर, right? So these are the separatist nations or the independent nations from Ukraine. These are the two regions I am talking about. I just wanted to show you in the map. So these two regions, they declared independence from Kyiv, which is the capital of Ukraine, right? Again, this is the third reason why all of this is happening. And they declared their independence even after the Minsk agreement, which took place in 2013-14. I'll don't worry, I'll tell you in the next slides as to what Minsk and the Normandy agreements was. ठीक है, इनके बारे में हम पढ़ेंगे. 2015 Minsk agreement. I'll be explaining each and everything about these agreements, so you don't need to worry. But yes, this is one of the those events I was talking about, jiski wajah se all of this is taking place. And the last one is, we know that recently abhi 2022 mein Russia invaded Ukraine. So to summarize, since this is very important, you must pay attention on each and every point. To summarize everything, initially what happened? Initially a Ukrainian revolution or anti-Viktor Yanukovych protest was going on, right? Because he was pro-Russian and he did not want to deal with the Europeans. The next, annexation of Crimea in 2014. Then what happened? Donetsk and Luhansk region, they declared their independence from the Kyiv, from the Ukraine. And then now, 2022 May, we have seen what is going on. Now, what is the background of the issue? The background of the issue, we know that before 1991, I mean, before the Soviet Union, it got collapsed in 1991. it basically consisted of not just Russia, but a lot more other countries, like, for example, the Central Asian countries, Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, etc. And also the European countries, like, for example, Latvia, Lithuania, Belarus, Ukraine, etc. Right? So after the, once the Cold War ended, the disintegration of USSR happened. We know this, right? And once it got disintegrated, the successor state of USSR was Russia, right? And the other countries, like, for example, the Central Asian countries and the Ukraine and, the European countries, they got independence from the USSR. Okay? But Ukraine is of particular interest to the Russia. And again, I'll be making you understand why only Ukraine. I mean, there are other countries as well, which is of high, which is of major interest to the Russia, but Ukraine in particular is of very much, is very much useful, or they're really interested, particularly interested in Ukraine, and I'll tell you how. There are reasons behind it. There are reasons behind this aggression. There are reasons behind why only Ukraine. So we'll be dealing with all of that. Okay, so this was the background, that after the collapse of USSR, all of these things happened, right? I hope I'm able to make this point about regarding the collapse of Soviet Union. Next point is Revolution of Dignity, 2014 Revolution of Dignity. I have already made you understand this point. It was again an anti-Yanukovych protest, the protest against the president, because again he was pro-Russian and did not wanted that trade deal to happen with Europeans, right? So this was again one of the major points, or one of the thing which we can count in the background of the entire issue. The third and the most important, I would want to put a star here, because this is really important, the dimension of NATO, the aspect of NATO, what NATO plays, a role into this. So this is highly important. NATO ki wajah se hi, this is one of the major I won't really comment on this, but definitely this is one of the major reasons of this war, NATO. Before we understand this point, let us understand about NATO. NATO is North Atlantic Treaty Organization. It got established, through this treaty only, called North Atlantic Treaty, or we also call it Washington Treaty of 1949. Initially, there were 12 founding members of it, but now it has expanded to such a level that now it consists of 30 member countries in NATO. And what is the objective of NATO? What are they trying to do, or what are they trying to achieve? They are basically, this is a group of, members who basically aims at protecting or safeguarding its member countries, both in terms of both politically and military means. So basically, to protect its member politically and military means, this is what NATO aims at, right? 12 members say they have expanded to 30 members. This is something, ye wala point is really important. You must pay attention on this, that they are expanding themselves, कि अभी वो अपने initial time से double से भी ज़्यादा हो चुके हैं. This is something which is a grave cause of a concern for Russia, and Russia is definitely not appreciating it, not liking this fact. Of course, अगर कोई भी enemy, if enemy comes and stands at your doorstep, you won't like it. Anybody won't like it, be it the family or the country. Nobody will like it. The same is happening with the Russia. Russia is not liking the expansion of it, because NATO is expanding, and Russia has this fear that they will in future come to their doorstep, come to their borders. Let me again take you to the map. They're afraid of this, that NATO, if Ukraine will join the NATO will come to their doorstep, here to the borders of Russia, which is definitely a cause of concern for Russia. Anyways, so this was the point about NATO, right? And this point, I have already told you about Donetsk and Luhansk. Don't worry, I'm जो भी important है, I'm telling you each and everything, so you don't need to, go with line by line. Whatever I'm telling you covers everything which has been mentioned here, right? So these were the major points. What were the major points? First, the collapse, regarding the background, first was the collapse of USSR in 1991. Then other countries, and all the countries got disintegrated, got independence. Then we talked about the revolution of dignity, wherein we talked about the anti Viktor Yankovic protest happened in the country. Then the point of NATO, what does the NATO dimension we covered, and again the Luhansk and Donetsk issue we covered. We have already seen this map. यहाँ पर ये European countries हैं. This is Sea of Azov, and this is the Black Sea, Crimean Peninsula. Yeah, this was majorly the map portion of it. Okay, I've told you that we will be reading as to what Minsk agreement. So this point basically is saying that the war is happening even if the people, I mean both the countries signed Minsk agreement. Now what is this Minsk agreement? Kab hua tha ye, and what was its objective? What exactly happened in Minsk agreement? Minsk agreement, basically it happened between Ukraine and Russia-backed separatists. Russia-backed separatists in some of the region and Ukraine. It happened between them regarding what? This is the point. This is the word you should remember, which is ceasefire. They promised to cease fire, but nothing like that happened. We have time and again, we have seen the violation of ceasefire. So this was basically, this was like a broken promise. They did not really followed it. Then 2015 में Minsk 2 हुआ. It was again, it was an open conflict was averted between after Minsk 2 peace agreement, which was signed. And who mediated it? France and Germany. Even Minsk agreement number 1 was mediated by these countries only, and it was designed to end the fighting in the rebel region and hand over the borders to Ukraine national troop. So for the ceasefire only, for the rebels region कि यहाँ पर और ज़्यादा fights or wars और जो भी ये सब चीज़ें नहीं होनी चाहिए, we must do things which brings peace and which takes us towards the peace. And it also promised to hand over, it also decided to hand over the borders to the Ukraine's national troops. But again, both of them were breached. We have seen the ceasefire violations again and again. Nothing like that happened. So this was about Minsk agreement or the Minsk accord. Normandy format में भी कुछ ऐसा ही हुआ था. Normandy is a place in France where this meeting or this thing took place. Again, it was also to find a peaceful resolution to the conflict of Ukraine due to Russia's military aggression. Again, the objective was pretty much the same, but like I've told you, nothing like that, nothing sort of that could be ever achieved. That is where we are facing this fight, this war. No? That is why these kind of situations we are facing. अगर वो हो चुका होता तो ये सब प्रॉब्लम नहीं होती. But we are facing this time wherein war is happening. All right, this is a map which is showing the boundary line between Russia and Ukraine Minsk agreement के बाद. Now what are those boundary lines? I'll tell you. So the blue line you can see is a Ukrainian line of control. ठीक है, यहाँ पे the area, this is the Ukraine one, right? The red line where it you can see this is the insurgent control, जहाँ पर आपको Donetsk और Luhansk वाले regions आपको दिखेंगे. बीच में these are the buffer zones you can see, right? So nothing much you need to remember, just that this is the boundary line between the Ukraine, between the Kiev and the insurgent groups or the rebellion groups, right? Which Russia has recently got, which Russia recently recognized these two rebellion countries also. Okay, Russia has recognized their independence. All right, again, a very important map. I think it's the same map, and I'm sure you all, abhi tak you all must be aware of this map. Kiev, this is Moldova. Moldova may be you can say there's a rebellious group here at this portion. We call it Transnistria, right? So Russia is basically trying to attack Ukraine from here, Kiev, from these two portions also, from these two countries also, and that is why Russia has recognized their independence from Luhansk and Donetsk. From Crimea also, Crimea to 2014 में ही इन्होंने annex कर लिया था, तो from Crimea also, right? So from all the sides Russia is trying to attack the Ukraine, right? Black Sea, I've told you. Okay. Regarding Black Sea and regarding the exam perspective, I'd like to mention one thing, that you must remember the bordering countries of the Black Sea or any other sea which is in news for that matter, right? If Mediterranean Sea in the news or any other water body is in news, you must make a list of the bordering countries of that particular water body. Like for example, Black Sea, if it is in the news, क्योंकि रशिया यूक्रेन की वजह से ब्लैक सी न्यूज में है, तो यू मस्ट नो दैट व्हाट आर द बॉर्डरिंग कंट्रीज ऑफ टू ब्लैक सी. हाउ आई ट्राई टू रिमेंबर इट, आई विल जस्ट टेल यू. So I try to remember the bordering countries using GTBURR. This is a short form I made. G stands for Georgia, T stands for Turkey, B stands for Bulgaria, U is Ukraine, R is Russia, and this R is Romania. So these are the 6 countries bordering Black Sea. Similarly, you have to make such things for the Mediterranean Sea also. UPSC have a very, it's their favorite habit to ask the bordering countries. Mediterranean पे तो वो काफी बार पूछ चुके हैं question. So you make sure that you prepare the bordering countries very carefully, and this is very important. Okay, you can write this. This is GTBURR. GTB, G stands for Georgia, Turkey, Bulgaria, Ukraine, Russia, and the another R stands for Romania. These are the countries which are bordering Black Sea. All right, moving ahead. Next, we have importance of Ukraine to Russia. Okay, we have seen that Russia, as I've told you, that Ukraine holds a particular interest to Russia. Now, what is that particular interest, and why Russia is so much interested in Ukraine, or why they do not want Ukraine to join NATO, or why they do not want Ukraine to do any kind of trade deals, or for that matter, do not want Ukraine to go with the European Union? It has reasons for it. The first one is they share cultural and linguistic ties. So this is again, for this I'd like to again take you to the background of it, to the history of it. Actually, historically, the Ukraine was occupied with ethnicity called Rus Vikings. So this is a ethnicity which Ukraine was occupied with, this ethnicity, right? And from here only, from this word only, Russia, the name Russia came into place. Okay, is Rus Viking ki wajah se, this ethnicity, because of this ethnicity only, the name Russia came into place. And what they used to do, they basically used to trade slaves from the European countries to the Central Asian countries. If we see the world map as a whole, Europe is situated here. This is the Ukrainian part, and यहाँ पर हमें Central Asian countries मिलेंगे. तो basically they used to trade the slaves from Europe to Central Asian, and that is why this entire portion is also called as Slavs, because they used to trade the slaves, right? So I hope it is clear that Russia came from the Rus Vikings, this ethnicity, and this trade used to happen from Europe to the Central Asian, and that is why this region is called Slav or the Slav population, right? Apart from this, they also share a very basic or a very important similarity. I'll tell you how. When they were together, both, I mean, when USSR was there, so all of their culture and civilization got developed from this one place called Principality of Kiev. Principality of Kiev, which is presently known as Kiev, which is the capital of Ukraine. So the entire civilization and the entire cultural thing was centered around Kiev only, was centered around this Principality of Kiev only. So definitely they share this bond, they share this their civilizational history, right? So this was the first point, and a very important point, because they share really important ties together. That is why Russia always say कि Ukraine तो हमारा ही part है, because they have their common history. I hope this history is clear to you. Rus Vikings, their trade, slave trades, and the Principality of Kiev, which in today's time known as Kiev, right, where all their civilization was centered around. Up next, we have Ukraine also has a lot of commercial industries and factories, and the defense manufacturing also, which Russia is interested into. And of course, जहां पर भी economical activities itni hongi, everybody, all the states would be interested into. So this is also a point of interest to the Russians in Ukraine, that they have commercial industries, factories, and defense manufacturing. All right. Up next, we have Ukraine, which borders Russia to the east. We know it got collapsed, and now to secure its border, it is very important for the Russia to, to have this thing with, to have a commonality or to have good relations with Ukraine, right? So I think these were the major points. We have already talked about NATO, how NATO is expanding, and how Russia is not liking it, the expansion of NATO, because they will anytime come at the doorstep of Russia, which no country would like, actually, not just Russia. So these are the major points. Now, again, a very important topic as to why Russia is being so aggressive. What are the reasons behind Russia being so aggressive? What are the points? Again, the first point, and again, I put a star mark here, because this point is talking about NATO, the influence of NATO. We know that NATO is expanding eastwards, as in towards the Russia, and Russia is not liking it. See, behind all of this, behind the whole story, there lies a broken promise. I'll tell you what, when the Cold War ended, Americans promised Russians that they won't be expanding eastwards, they won't be expanding towards the Russia, but it has clearly been broken. And that is why this is one of the reasons that Russia is behaving aggressively, क्योंकि उन्होंने Americans ने ये promise break किया है, because Americans promised that we won't be expanding ourselves and we won't be coming towards the eastern borders or towards the Russia, but they're doing so, right? This is one of the major reasons behind the Russia aggression, right? Again, it's the same thing which is talking the NATO enlargement and everything. So yeah. Next. Okay, this is the enlargement of NATO. I have told you that all of this started in 1949, right? The founding members were how much? The founding members were 12, and that then it got expanded, and now they are 30 in number. They've expanded it to such a level wherein initially they promised that they won't be expanding, but they're doing opposite of it. So of course, these are the member countries. You can have a look at this map. Okay, this is the map from 1914 to 2018. अभी और भी कुछ additions इसमें हुए हैं. So update this map kindly. All right, NATO, I have told you what is it all about. Okay, so nothing much about this. Okay, apart from that, apart from that first reason which we talked about, the NATO wala region, there are other reasons. For example, geopolitical and geostrategic regions, which is what? Russia and Ukraine host a substantial portion of masses that want to create an independent nation. And which two independent nations were that? Donetsk and Luhansk. So this is again a geostrategic factor which is leading to all of this. If we talk about the economic factors may Russia, just a second. Yeah. Economic factors may. So what happened once, Russia created a group called Eurasian Economy, considering the economic significance of Ukraine, Russia created this thing. So Russia sought Ukraine's membership in Eurasian Economic Community. Russia created this. Russia wanted Ukraine to join this group instead of NATO or EU, but Ukraine did not. Ukraine refused to join it, right? And again, it's the same thing. It is talking about NATO, it is talking about USSR, it is talking about. So these were some of the things, some of the conflicts, or some of the major concerns of Russia, conflicts between Russia and Ukraine, and the angle of NATO or USA. All right. Now, so um, this is decline of US as a world hegemon. Russia knows that US will not act effectively as it has become weak and isolationist. So West at the most can impose sanctions and nothing more. So Russia knew this, and that is why Russia was not really afraid of all these things. Now Russia's own vulnerability, Russia की खुद के कुछ ऐसे points है that Russia is vulnerable at, like for example, rivers in Russia flow from north to south, which is not good for transportation. That is why Russia is in a mood of aggression and wants a good transportation, a good and safe borders, and a good trade for itself. The next is most of the land is waste, ठीक है, क्योंकि वहाँ पर बहुत ठंड पड़ती है, permafrost region है, we all know that from the geographic point of view. Then Russia forms a part of heartland. Heartland countries were supposed to dominate the world, but Russia is almost landlocked. That is why also Russia is in mood to you can say expand itself or have control on other countries, so that their trade and their control could be better over other countries. Okay, now yeah, these were actually not these were actually the major points which I have listed. Now, something which I would like to mention here, which is Russia's demand. The war and everything is happening, but what are Russia's demand? What does Russia actually wants? Russia actually, it has a simple demand that it does not want Ukraine to join NATO, right? That's the first demand, and that's the major demand, that it does not want Ukraine to join NATO. Also, it does not want the further expansion of NATO. So no further expansion of NATO. Okay, so no further expansion, ताकि Ukraine and countries like Ukraine, Georgia joins NATO. It does not want that. Next, Russia asked NATO to pull back the military deployment in 1990 level. का आप pull back करो, but again, NATO did not really care about it. Next, Russia claims that eastward expansion by the NATO, which they call enlargement, has threatened Russia's interest and asked for a written security guarantees from NATO, which NATO, of course, denied to give. The last point is Russia has asked NATO to curb its military cooperation with Ukraine. So again, it's the same point. All of them are related with the Russia, with NATO or with USA, which USA has denied to follow. Okay. Now, what is the response from the world on the issue? This is important, but more important for us, for our exam perspective, is what are the India's concerns and what is the India's stand on it. Okay, first let me cover what is the world's response. Actually, G7 leaders, what they did on 24th of February, just the war has started, just after the Beijing Olympic Games. They promised devastating packages of sanctions. They put sanctions, which Russia already knew that just some of the sanctions are going to be there, nothing more than that. And exactly that's happening. Just the sanctions they put. The US has ruled out changing NATO's open door policy, means NATO denied that we won't be expanding. I mean, NATO still is on the point what they were doing, that they are expanding, they are enlarging themselves. Apart from this, Britain, Germany, and many other nations imposed harsh sanctions to cripple the Russian economy, so that they cannot really finance their military, and the war could be stopped. Germany has also warned Russia कि जो Nord Stream 2 pipeline है, which is a 1,200-kilometer pipeline from Russia to Ukraine, and it carries near about 55 billion cubic meter. Just a second. It carries 55 billion cubic meters of gas per year. I'm talking about per year. Okay, so this is a gas pipeline from Russia to रशिया टू जर्मनी, जो कि जर्मनी ने बोला है दैट दे विल स्टॉप दिस एंड दे हैव एक्चुअली स्टॉप दिस, कि हम अपने ऊपर कुछ चीज़ें उठा लेंगे बट वी वांट दिस वॉर टू बी स्टॉप. जर्मनी हैज सेड, जर्मनी इज ऑफ दिस पॉइंट, so they stopped this 1200-kilometer gas pipeline. Then US also threatened Russia by imposing new economic sanctions, right? Or UNSC key meeting, maybe they have condemned the Russia's act. Okay. Now, what are the possible impacts of Russia-Ukraine conflict in the world? What are the possible impacts? Before reading to the possible impacts to India, let us cover what are the possible impacts on the world of the entire war. So there would be a humanitarian crisis. We know that, right? The livelihood and the lives from both the sides are going to impact a lot. So humanitarian crisis is the first thing. Risk of nuclear war. The war is there, and we never know if it gets escalated. There could be a possible nuclear war, which would be fatal for the entire world. Then there is an arm race in Europe. Arm race could start again in Europe, with countries trying to raise their arsenal for protecting themselves against the sudden intervention of the strong powers. Second, next is global economic slowdown. Of course, India में तो हम already हमने share market की हालत देखी ही थी. It, काफी slowdown हमने देखा उसमें. So the same could happen at the global level as well. Next is further weakening and undermining of credibility of UN. UN की credibility पे भी एक question उठाता है as to what UN is doing. UN is not really doing anything in this respect, in this aspect. So this also questions the credibility of United Nations. Now, what are India's concern? Again, an important point, especially for our exam perspective. What are India's concerns, and what is the India's stand on it, on the entire situation? So India's concern is कि world war scenario ना हो जाए, because it is going to impact the economy of our country. So economically, we can get impacted if the world war happens. Next is S4 delivery and US waiver. S400 delivery, जो कि हम रशिया से लेते हैं. We were expecting certain US waivers on it, but अभी क्योंकि war हो गया है, we can't really expect those waivers, and again, it can impact us. Okay. CAATSA, again, you must be knowing CAATSA is countering America's adversaries through Sanction Act. Okay? So this is also one of the points. So Biden administration was looking soft on India's S40 before the war happens, but now there are possibility that we won't be getting any waiver. We won't be getting things which will be in our favor because of this war. So this is again one of our major concerns. Apart from this, the focus will move from China. The world is busy in the war happening between the Ukraine and Russia. Hence, it will move the focus from the China. ठीक है, जो चाइना और हमारे जो चाइना और इंडिया के जो भी कंसर्न्स हैं, it will move the focus from that to the Russia-Ukraine war. Okay, now, yeah, again, it will bring China and Russia closer. It has already happened because 24th is a date which should be remembered, because as soon as the Beijing Olympics got over, the war started. So it is already showing us a connection, a kind of a tie between Russia and China, and it might, there are chances that the entire war might bring them closer. China might help them, and eventually they will be closer, which is definitely a grave cause of a concern for us. Next, energy crisis. This is very evident. We are seeing this. We are living in this situation. There's nothing to really make you understand or elaborate about this point, because we are living in this situation. Already tensions have pushed the oil prices up 14% in a month past $90. And analysts also say that they could hit $125 a barrel agar ye war resolve nahi hota hai. Definitely हमारे पॉकेट्स पे ये बहुत भारी पड़ने वाला है. नेक्स्ट इज द वर्ल्ड इज बिकमिंग इंक्रीजिंगली इकोनॉमिकली एंड जियोपॉलिटिकली इंटरकनेक्टेड. वी नो इन द एरा ऑफ ग्लोबलाइजेशन वी ऑल आर इंटरकनेक्टेड, और अगर एक जगह कोई भी प्रॉब्लम आती है, इट इज डेफिनेटली गोइंग टू इम्पैक्ट द अदर कंट्रीज and particularly our country. Okay, now what is India's stand on it? India के का क्या stand है is considering that we share a critical aspect of relationship with with USA and Russia both, which spans from, defense to, you can say, the strategic dimensions and also the commercial concerns, it is very important for us to maintain a neutral stand, right? Because see, the implication of this war is just majorly going to be diplomatic on us. On the other hand, it is going to be huge on Europe. But just some diplomatic concerns we can face. So India's neutrality can win the situation, or you can say India's neutrality only is going to be the way forward, and we should maintain that. And we are already maintaining a neutral stand on the entire situation, because we have relationships with both the countries, with US as well as with Russia. So we need to keep this critical relationship balanced, and this critical relationship could stay balanced only if we maintain a neutral, a balanced approach with both the countries. And we are exactly doing the same, and this is the only stand, this is the only, perfect stand which could be possible, and we are already doing it. We have already abstained from voting in UNGA, okay? And we know that neutrality is the only, should be the only stand, and is the only way forward for us as a country, especially, right? India abstained from US-sponsored UN Security Council resolution. This is again one thing, and we did not endorse any harsh language, right? Because we are at a position wherein we have to maintain a neutral stand, a balanced approach. So we cannot, and we did not use any harsh language against any of the countries, right? So this was about it. This was majorly about it. Okay. And why are we doing this? Just a second. Why are we doing this? We are basically doing this to counter the China's rise. We have to, हमें अपने borders भी secure रखने हैं ना. So we cannot really afford to take any of the countries, be it Russia, be it USA, uh, at a opposing side of ours. So we need to maintain that as well. Next is unavoidable dualism in the contemporary Indian strategic landscape. हमें पता है that New Delhi needs Moscow assistance to manage its continental difficulties. So we need Russia's help in that as well, especially SEO mein, Pacific region mein, and all those regions we need Russia's assistance. So we cannot really afford to go against Russia. We also need a lot of we also need USA at a lot of places, so we cannot go against US also. So like I said, this is a very critical aspect of relationship we need to maintain, and we are doing the same. Again, if you talk about trade and investment, or India or Russia ka trade is also valued around $10 billion. So India ke imports a substantial amount of energy and defense material from Russia. So this also we need to maintain. Again, this is what lies ahead. This is there's nothing important, I mean, there's nothing so much to read in this, just that we need to maintain a neutral stand, and we are already doing that. That is it. Okay, now what is the conclusion is कि जो भी हमने मिन्स agreement, नॉर्मंडी जो भी agreements हुए थे, या फिर इन सब चीज़ों को हमें थोड़ा seriously लेना चाहिए, which I know the countries are not taking, but if such agreements happen, we need to take them seriously. We need to do things which do not escalate the war further. Yeah. So at the end of the entire lecture, I would just say that both the countries, or any of the countries for that matter, should not indulge themselves in any kind of activity or any kind of event which escalate the war, which escalate the situation. We need to harmonize things for a better future, not just for our country, but at a global level too. With this, I hope it was clear. I hope I'm able to put all the points across. And this was the end of our topic. Thank you so much.